Puffins, and welcome to another episode of Eat Puff Love. We are your hosts, Growlr.
And I'm your boy Vibes.
How you doing today, Vibe?
I'm good. How about yourself?
I am doing so good. Let me tell you, it is a nice day in DC. We have our cannabis going, we have our cocktails, and we have someone on the line with us.
We do.
Ooh.
Everybody, I want to introduce you to one of my very long and good friends, as well as a sex expert, couples expert, and just an all-around awesome person. Everybody say hello, little puffins, to Aimee. Hey, Aimee.
Hello, Eat Puff Love.
Yes.
I'm very happy to be here, VBYZ and Growlr. Thank you for having me.
So glad you're here.
Yes, we are so grateful to have you here. How are you feeling today?
Doing so good. I'm, been very excited to be on this podcast. I think I reached out to you because I was listening to it in the middle of Costco one day and smiling about what everybody could hear in my ears if they knew what I was listening to. They would just laugh at me,
I remember you
And
sending
so
me
I think I
something
reached out
that
and I
said
just said,
yeah.
Hey Vibes, I'm loving your vibe, and then here we are. How
Here
fun
we
is
are.
this?
Hashtag play Eat Puff Love in Costco out loud. Hashtag the future is Eat Puff Love.
Right. Get it wherever you get your favorite podcast.
Get it wherever you get your favorite podcast, and hopefully your favorite podcast is playing over the radio in your grocery store.
Or wherever you get your favorite rotisserie chicken. I don't know what y'all get at Costco, but you get toilet paper.
No, here in DC, the Costco, you can buy alcohol. So anytime I've ever gone to Costco, the intention has always been to buy
Copious amounts of alcohol.
Except in the state that I am currently residing in, Costco cannot sell alcohol, so we do not get alcohol at Costco anymore.
That's right.
But when we go to another state, we do buy it.
So I'm assuming that there's like, you know how you get those soda cans that are in that deadly 6-pack with the plastic that's terrible for ducks.
Yes,
I'm assuming you
that's
can get
right.
6 packs of vodka there, or
No. They just have it at like wholesale rate. So it's a little less expensive if you want to buy your favorite bottle of whatever.
You buy a giant thing of vodka versus just a little bottle of
And
vodka.
actually, sidebar, all of the same distilleries, like Grey Goose, Premium Vodka is using the same distillery that Costco's vodka is.
Yeah,
so,
I did know that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I knew this too.
I did know that.
And it takes a lot to get to be a vendor to Costco. Like, you have to meet rigorous regulations. So they actually, some people say their alcohol is actually better than people give it credit for. So,
Okay, I'm with it. And it's
I'm
like
not a pro,
$19.99 a bottle.
Okay.
You get a whole year's supply of vodka. But they also have wines. They have tons of bottles of wines. But how do we get on this topic?
I don't know.
Well,
Right.
And that's a good question, because I am sitting here and I'm like, you know what? My first question was actually going to be for you to tell us who you were, but we know who you are. You go to Costco and you buy a year's worth of vodka.
While I listen to Eat Puff
Puff
Love.
Love.
That is exactly who I am. Do we need to know any more than that?
Yes, we need to know more. Tell them more, because there is much more. So, yes, please tell us a little about who Aimee is.
I'll tell you a quick little summary about who I am and why I'm on your show. But my name is Aimee, and I am a marriage and family therapist, and also I am an ASEX certified sex therapist. And I've been doing that job for about 15 years in the Seattle area, and it's just become a niche that I have a lot of sex therapy clients. I have lots of kink or poly clients. I do lots of religious sexual shame in my practice, and I also like cannabis. And and I go way back. So is that enough of an introduction?
Yeah,
Dang it.
No, it's all
I,
right. It's all right,
I'm
Amy.
sorry.
It's
I'm
okay.
sorry, vibes.
It's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
Have I already blown it? Was
No,
that my
not
No,
at
first
all. Not at
blowing?
all. Not at all.
no. This
Okay.
is what post production is
This is
for.
for. Yeah, not at
Okay,
all.
well, I promise I will only do blowings in certain situations, but not anymore by saying your name. Okay, where should I begin? Okay,
You know what?
so
I almost want to just bleep out his
Name.
name and keep that whole segment that just happened because that was good.
No, and that's what I was thinking
maybe it
too.
could be an outtake or something. You can make it an outtake.
Take, yeah.
I'm gonna try hard, not vibes.
Vibes.
I'm
It's
gonna
all.
just
It's
get
all
good
good.
vibes, baby.
It's all
You got
good.
good vibes. So here
But
we go. Vibes. Was there
yes.
anything else that you
Well,
wanted me to explain to who I am?
well, I just think that how we could talk briefly about how we came together.
Yeah, I'm interested in how you two got to know each other. Maybe you can
Oh.
tag team this one. I'm interested in how do you
It's
both
such
know
a
each
good
other?
story.
Yeah.
Let's
So
tag team this vibes.
let's
Yes.
tag team it. I'll
Okay.
start. So, I used to work for an organization here in the DC area, and Amy's dad was my boss. I was his assistant. Well, one of his assistants.
This is true.
And
True.
uh, Aimee came to visit after you had been abroad in Japan, and
Yes.
she was here in DC for the summer, and we sat side by side in the same cubicle. And I don't know if Lee kind of set it up that we were going to become friends, but immediately I feel like we became friends.
It was like immediate. It was immediate, and I don't even think that it was intentional that my dad put us next to each other. I was just covering for someone that was on maternity leave, and
Yeah.
it just worked out that we sat together, but we from the very beginning started to like each other. Not like
Aw.
you know.
Not
Yeah.
like.
Like. No, because at the time,
But we had like good vibes, like our souls like knew each other or something.
yeah,
You know?
absolutely. And we
And
just
so
go ahead.
we felt really connected. We felt super connected. And then we became friends outside of just work, right?
Yeah.
And you just showed me around DC, so I lived there for I think the whole like end of summer into all the fall, and then I moved at Christmas time. But we had just like, such a good autumn together, didn't we?
We did. I had Aimee up in the Bachelor's Mill, God rest its soul. I had her in all the like blackest turned up gay clubs in DC.
Okay, but this is what's fun. This is the fun part. So Growlr, you
Yes.
probably don't know this, but I'm going to tell you this fun story. So
Okay.
some of the things, part of the reason why I think I became a sex therapist, I knew I was always going to be a therapist. I knew I always wanted to be a marriage and relationship therapist. Like that was always calling to me. And I liked to talk about sex a lot. I did like that.
Yeah.
And my really like my experience hanging out with vibes in DC, and we went to New York and everything. But it really we had so many fun conversations about sexuality.
Yeah.
Don't you think, vibes?
Yeah, we definitely
And
did.
and what was kind of fun is it was this like Seattle white girl, and then like the East Coast, you know, kid, and we were just this very interesting pair. And but the thing is you know, vibes took me all around and really opened up my eyes to. I think that was my first drag show. You took me to my first drag
Yeah.
show.
Wow.
And also just because of our conversations so much around just queer topics and things like that, and race and gender and sexuality in different cultures around America, you know, like we had so many fun conversations like that. And so I think some of those experiences really were the roots of my really interest in a lot of the bigger opening doors of sexuality. It was really fun to hang out with vibes during that time.
That's a big compliment, Vibes. How you
Yeah.
feeling over here?
I'm trying not to get all teary eyed, but I think that's awesome
But
because
then, yeah, go ahead.
I
Your
just
turn.
feel like that was your experience, and my experience was I was able to share a little bit more with someone that I felt really connected to and felt really open and able to say, yeah, see, and be a part of. Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, it was so fun. It was such a fun friendship in my life at such a critical age for me, you know.
Wow.
And so, but then came to visit me in Seattle.
Yep.
And this was fun because it was really interesting to see the different cultures around sexuality. Because I think I took you to a gay club, right?
Yeah.
Right, Vibes?
Yeah, we did.
And it was in Seattle, and so Vibes had taken me to clubs in the DC area, which had very different cultural dynamics. And then when Vibes came out to Seattle, I think your eyes were really open to the different culture that Seattle was and the different sex culture that we experienced there, you know?
Yeah,
So-
I think in that moment there was a couple takeaways when I came to Seattle. It was okay. All people of color, all people, black, brown, are partying together because they're part of this subgroup of culture, and this is what the dynamic of this city looks like, and so they have each other, and so they're not that they're not having issues or whatever, but they're partying together, not like DC where everything is segregated, but this is supposed to be progressive.
Right.
And then the idea of like just body positivity, you can be who you want to be, you can look how you want to look in Seattle at that time, and that wasn't what was happening here on the East Coast. It was here, you have to fit this form of what society said at the time what was sexy, which was like buff and built and all, So yeah, it was an eye opener for me, absolutely, to start like embracing myself.
But it was just so fun. It was
Yeah,
just
and
such a
fun
fun
too.
era of like even my awakening of sexuality from like such a different perspective of what I had grown up experiencing, right?
Yeah.
And so it was really great for me to just be exposed to Vibe's world, and it was so nice of him to really open it up to me in a really. I mean, we were buddies, but I mean, you didn't have to do that, really, Vibes. You know, like you didn't have to take me to your clubs and stuff, but. I mean, it was just so fun. It really opened up my eyes. Like forever that drag show is gonna always be forever a special thing in my heart. And I've been to many drag shows since, but those were very special, you know.
Miss Honey. Miss Honey.
But I also just think it was just we had such rich conversations at just a critical age for us.
Yeah.
To really be talking about how we discovered our sexuality too, because I was asking you lots of questions about, okay, Growlr, you like this, okay? So we went to New York, and Vibes definitely was teaching me some things about like just just basic observations of people around town, you know, and Vibes just really gave me some education in a really wonderful way that was just, I don't know, I just loved it. So it was just that relationship that I had with Vibes really informed me in so many ways to want to become a sex therapist and to want to be able to say, oh wow, look, sexuality is so much bigger than what I have experienced in my little bubble. And so I feel grateful for that. So that's how we know each other.
Yeah.
You know, and we've just stayed friends, and then, you know, we've kind of reconnected every once in a while over the years, and then I was in Costco listening to the podcast because I saw it on Instagram. I guess that's how I saw the podcast.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I'm a super huge fan of cannabis, and I'm a sex therapist, and so those two things, and I love to eat, and it looks like our lives have kind of come at this really fun crossroads together. So it was so fun to listen to the podcast, and so I'm a fan. So I'm excited to be here.
Join us by subscribing to wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, and remember to eat, puff, love.
Go.
Welcome back, little puffins.
Yes.
We're here with my friend, Aimee, who is an extraordinary, marital and sex therapist.
Yes.
And Aimee, we were talking about earlier about how we met, But I wanted to transition the conversation a little bit, just around about
Okay.
sexual health, sexual awareness. I don't know what to call it, but I
Mm.
just think about myself and how, over time, you were talking about I, how we interacted and how you understood like sexuality and that piqued your interest. And I'm like, I've been kind of in a space where later after that whole experience, we've known one another for a long time, but no, I'm like really ex- experiencing and learning more things about myself. Like I was married briefly for a while and in a monogamous relationship. Then I decided that I was going to be ethically non-monogamous after that ended, and introduced myself into like outwardly saying, "Oh, I'm into kink and I'm a baiter," someone who enjoys masturbating, and I'm a naturalist out,
Yes.
showing my
Yes.
body out in the open. All these things that I was kind of probably always had thought about but not owning. And I'm wondering, I have my own understanding about how that happened for me, but I'm wondering for our people who are listening, like, what do you think about the journey? How does it happen? I know it happens differently for others, but like, what words of wisdom
Yes. Okay.
or things
Here
could
are
you
my
give?
words of wisdom. I it has been fun vibes to kind of watch your kind of just in the years that I've known you, watch how things have unfolded for you too. So this is definitely an important question because as a sex therapist, people come into a therapeutic space, and sex therapy isn't where people touch you or have sex with you. That's a different kind of
Right.
sex thing that I would refer people to. But in terms of like getting to that inner listening, what I usually talk about. So Emily Nagoski is an author that wrote a book called "Come as You Are." Have either one of you read that book by chance?
No, I have
No.
not.
But is it
Okay.
spelled CUM as you are?
I wish it was. It's not, but it does have a very provocative front cover of like it is probably a little bit more vulva focused,
Okay.
and so that's why I asked. Like maybe you guys haven't read it,
No.
but at the same time, there are things in there for all people. And Emily Nagoski, she's very sciencey with her research, and it's very accessible. Her TED Talk is worth listening to. But one of my favorite things that she talks about is we are kind of born into this garden, and the soil and the light and all that stuff around specifically our sexuality is very interesting to go back and look at and be reflective of like what was the soil of your sexuality that you were grown up in, right? So part of what I get to do with my clients is being able to really, in a more adult way, your a more adult self can look back on this very important part of ourselves, our sexual parts of ourselves,
Hmm.
is such a fragile, tender part that it stays with us through our whole life, right? And sometimes that part of us gets violated earlier than it needs
Right.
to be, or that we get messages or we get scripts around what our sexuality should be,
Right.
right? Now, vibes, I remember for you, like we had so many conversations about what it meant to be a queer man in like the culture that you grew up in,
Right.
right? And we had so many fun conversations about that. But what everybody, not everybody, no one has to do anything. But when you're really trying to get reflective about, hey, how do I like listen to my own inner like sexual self and honor that and really look at it with some compassion, sometimes for the first time, right?
Mhm.
And accountability too, accountability to your own sexuality, and also being able to say, oh, guess what? Maybe I've given away a lot of my authority around my sexuality through my life for whatever reason, whether it's family, culture, religion, just awful experiences that you've had, sexual assault, whatever it might be, that then gets imprinted on your little tender soul of your sexual self, right?
Right.
And so sometimes when you grow up and you think, oh my gosh, what's happening? You get in relationships that kind of call out some of these parts of yourselves, or even personally, like you just want to make some changes around your own sexual narrative, right?
Mhm.
And so I think one of the important things to do, I'm sorry I'm talking so long, but I'll get to my point, is that Emily Nagoski talks a lot about saying, how do you cultivate your own garden of sexuality? And sometimes that's really having to start from scratch for some people to say, I want to make meaning and I want to make sense of everything that's happened to me that kind of shaped where I am right now sexually. And then one of the most important parts of that is being able to honor all of the phases that you had with your sexuality and see where your journey is or how you're growing up or how you're evolving or getting into kinks or just being more comfortable masturbating and enjoying the pleasure of that, all that kind of stuff. But then what's so important too is like also talking about the vision of what you want to become, what your sexual self wants to become, right? Like what are your hopes around your sexuality? It doesn't just end, when you, I don't know when people think what is the ending of sexuality. There's like not a pinnacle that everyone needs to be striving for. So anyway, just making peace with your sexuality is what I love to do with clients, what I love to see from people that are really wrestling with some of that identity stuff around it. So,
and it's interesting,
what
like
I
you
would
said.
have to offer is that how do you have joy and confidence in your own sexuality, and it's such an important part of ourselves. All right, now I will take a break and have you respond. You're like, we get no airtime with this girl.
No.
No.
Listen, because you know what I took away from that was especially the last part that you said about owning your future sexuality, like making sure that you're crafting the way you want it to be. Like that's the part that, like for me, and now I feel like I'm in a therapy session.
It's okay. I want the juice.
I'm like, for me, that's like where I'm at right now. I want to make sure that I'm crafting it the way that I want it to be.
Yeah.
For me, and also the people who in which I'm engaged with or in partnership with.
Right.
And wanting it to be what I want it to be, not what, those past things that you talked about, maybe trying to say it is, and just living in what I want it to be and striving to make sure that I'm doing the work to make it that way. And I don't think that I've ever really deeply thought about my sexual health in that way before.
No. And even as, like you said, like thinking about it from, like, okay, these past experiences, this soil exists, and it's a part of my story. However, there's this level of control that I have around, like, what do I want today though, and what do I want to move? How do I want to move forward? Yeah, like that got me over here. Like, oh my gosh, you said you're in a therapy session. I'm like, oh my gosh, am I having a breakthrough right now? I haven't even like told you anything yet. I'm having a whole breakthrough. Everybody gets a breakthrough today.
Hey, I'm here for the breakthroughs because that's the thing is that like what people don't realize is that everybody has a sexual story, has a sexual narrative, has painful stories, has beautiful stories, right? And a lot of times, especially like when you think about like the queer kink community, right? Oh, there's some painful stories in that because some of those messages that people have about being queer and being kink specifically are not from an informed place, right? And so most often stories around sexuality come with so much shame, right? And so how do you make shame? How do you get shame to kind of leave your body, right? Like how do you, and I tease all the time, and I probably inappropriately say it all the time, but I just like want people to like orgasm their shame out of their body. And I don't know how that is a scientific thing, but I think what
hey, if you can do
these breakthroughs, right? Like you having these breakthroughs, what we don't realize is that like sometimes some of the breakthroughs that can happen are so inside of ourselves that are so related to some of the sexuality stuff that comes up inside of us. A lot of the shame, a lot of the self-hate, a lot of those the kind of the critic inside is a lot. There is a lot wrapped up in the sexual shame place of that part of us, right? So, it's just all of the stories. There's just a lot of sad stories, and so what I say in all of us is, how do you then become the new author of the rest of your story? Sometimes there's things that happen to you that you had no control over, right?
Right.
And so being able to kind of say, I get to be in charge of this, and how do I be my own sexual self, right? And I tease all the time that, I say this all the time, that nobody wants a threesome with anxiety. Nobody wants a threesome with
But then
anxiety.
he's
But
like,
I also
that's
say
right.
nobody wants a one sum. Like, no one wants a one sum with anxiety. And what we know definitely is that shame creates a lot of anxiety inside of people, you know?
Yeah.
And so when you're trying to say, how do I get back to myself around sexuality? How do I own my own sexual story? How do I really be comfortable with what are my yums and what are my yucks? And like, okay, there's other people's yums and yucks, and that's fine, but like, I need to figure out what are mine and how do
Right.
I experience pleasure in my whole body, because the shame, it's a real horny killer. You know, it's a real
Mm-hmm.
boner killer.
Yeah.
It's a real, like, you know, like, desire stopper. And so that shame and anxiety, it is not a place that we want to have in the bedroom, or in the bathroom, or outside in the open air, wherever you're doing the sexy things.
Right.
But really being able to say, personally, we all have to be accountable for our own sexual stories and how we are making sense of that, and how we are holding that in our bodies, and how we're holding that during sex, right? Because our bodies remember some of the traumas, some of the sad that's happened to us. But we break in sexuality and we heal in sexuality. I always say we break in relationships and we heal in relationships. So it is in sexuality that we can heal a lot of some of those broken places.
Hmm.
But you can't do it without kind of an awareness of self when it comes to it all. So I love the breakthroughs.
Yeah.
I love that. You know, um, it's got me thinking about how people oftentimes will use kink as a way um, to explore things that they want to explore and to um, try new things. But I also hear you say, and correct me, what I also hear you say is that there's a level of confronting of those things and also intention setting that even if you decide that I'm going to be dominant and I'm going to put on the outfit, but if you've not
Yeah.
done the actual work behind behind addressing who you want to be, then you're just somebody in a fancy costume.
Yes, and like, sometimes when people say, like, doing the work, like, what does that even mean? Like, that is
Right.
such a concept that sometimes, what the hell does that mean? And when we're doing our sexual work, what does
Right.
that even mean, right? But I do think it's this place of being able to say, like, I want to look at my own story and see how some of the experiences that led me here, some of the messages or some of the narratives that I internalize deeply, whether it's around, at least, like, for me, I would definitely have some messages that I received from the religion I grew up in around, like, some sexism around
Yeah.
sexuality, right?
Yeah.
And so what ends up happening is couples come in a lot of times, and they're kind of like blaming the other partner, sexual whatever, fill in the blank, sexual adventures, sexual kinks, the fact that they're even interested in pornography, whatever it might be. There's oftentimes this finger pointing that says, like,
Mm-hmm.
fix them. I'm coming into you to do sex therapy. Please fix my partner that has all these whatever things are.
Yeah.
And what ends up happening is you can't just, like, point the finger at someone else without really having to confront your own self and sexuality,
Right.
right? And so what does it mean to do the work? Well, what it means to do the work is saying, okay, well, here is my sexual story, and here is, like, places where maybe I have some internalized homophobia,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes that stuff that you were, some of that soil, some of that garden that you're born into is still in there, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm going to be personal. For me personally, it was this idea around, for women, there's a lot of ideas around, or I should say vulva owners, okay? This idea around not receiving pleasure. Okay,
Hmm.
now, I know y'all are probably more in, you hang with men, maybe penises more than vaginas, is my guess, right?
Sometimes.
Sometimes, okay. But like, having to unpack a deeply internalized message that I had around the fact that I was to be only performative in my sexual experiences, because heaven forbid a man better pick me to want to fuck me, right? And so
Right.
I better be fuckable. And so I had a lot of work to do for myself to unpack being able to receive pleasure in a partnered sexual experience, right? because some of the messages that I had was that I was to be beautiful and pretty, and like pleasure is a secondary thing to what I'm supposed to be providing for my partner in the sexual experience, right? So many women have to then really unpack what it means to like actually own your pleasure, be in pleasure, know what your pleasure is, know how to articulate what you want and like, you know. So lots of times, like with like people that identify as women in therapy, that is a lot of the work that's happening. But with any kind of thing, you know, there's shame around kink, and so it's like, okay, well then how do you work out the fact that you're a baiter?
Yeah.
Right.
Vibes. Did you have any shame that you had to work out through that you had to like face and take accountability for?
Well, when you were speaking about, like, you were talking about how, in general, what I would say how society dictates how we should all be, like patriarchy, talking about how women should be. And I'm thinking
Mm-hmm.
how that even flows over into relationships that are within people who identify as the same gender, and the idea that you
100%.
have to take a role, like this
Yeah.
idea of
Yes.
top and bottom,
Tops and bottom.
Top, bottom.
and how
Now I'm
even
learning all
for
about the sides. I'm
yeah,
Yeah.
learning
like
all about the sides now. You
about
know.
about the size of your penis or your dick, or this or about how long you can last it,
Yeah.
so you don't seminal fluid ejaculation, or that if you are even thinking about exploring any type of anal play, then you're somehow not fulfilling your role as a man, because the top
Yeah.
meant man, and so a
Yes.
bottom means basically woman, right, in patriarchal structure, and how all of this shit is happening, and everybody's experiencing this kind of like warped sense of sexual self, because this is the way our society says this we should exist. And it's like when you're like, okay, yeah, like you were saying, like, okay, now I'm a baiter. Well, hell, I've loved masturbating for a very long time. It gets me through,
Yes.
and I
Yes.
enjoy it. And
So, so, but also, vibes. If I were to ask you deeply, like, tell me the roots of like where you started doing that for yourself. I bet it's from a very young age.
yeah,
My guess
I
is it
actually taught.
became a coping mechanism for a lot of stress relief.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yes.
I learned how to masturbate literally from reading in a book.
Me too.
I
Yes.
went to my
What?
public
Yes. Me
ligory
too.
in my
Oh my gosh, I
hometown,
love to hear
and
masturbation
I was
stories.
like
Tell me.
researching like sex stuff, because I was curious. And even though my mother is an active therapist, she just had very mechanical. She doesn't want me to talk about things like this on. But
The
anyway,
podcast.
it was
She's
basically I learned from a book, and I went and I did everything that it said in the book. It was some old, like, probably stuff from like the 60s.
Oh my gosh.
okay.
I produced, an orgasm. I came, and
Okay.
from there, I just continued to do it, and it's been like a thing. I mean, and now I'm of age where I do it, and I do it proudly, and I'm not ashamed. And I don't
Yeah.
know that I was
Yes.
ashamed amongst my friend set, because like I was like the one researching shit online, like internet, like, hey, you should try this, because I like sharing things. I like sharing
Okay.
information. But I think sharing more about like becoming a part of a community, I think that happened later in life,
Yeah.
and that happened when Growlr and I met, because he was already like, I'm a baiter. I'm like, what's a baiter? I'm like, what does that even mean? Like,
And Aimee, you said you like these kinds of stories, so I'll also share that.
Okay.
That's where I learned from as well. I would go to the public library, and I would go into the section on human sexuality, and I would look in the books, and there were a lot of books about like there's like books about as my changing body, my
Yes.
you know
Yes.
what it means to be a boy, what it means to be a girl. This is what
Yep.
penises look like, and it tried its best to show a diversity of penises, and it
Mm-hmm.
was just like, oh my gosh. But I learned from a book, and honestly, I learned from a book about how to anally pleasure myself as well, and so
Okay.
So that,
Good, because here's the thing.
yeah,
I always feel happy when people can get the resources that they need to be able to have a fully informed consensual experiences.
yeah,
You know, fully that you can go into an anal experience and know that you're safe, that you're gonna be prepared, that you can be confident. Like all of that stuff, I love that you can find that information.
yeah,
Bless the library
yeah.
for
It was
having
in my
that.
public library, and I'm telling you, them books were checked out all the time.
I think the passage of my book was, if I kind of remember it, it was like from, like I said, from the '60s. So it was like, if you want to masturbate, go into a closed room, ensure the door is locked, set mood lighting,
Yes,
and
moonlighting.
vigorously rub
But
your
I
penis
I
until
wanna
it
tell
becomes
y'all.
erect. Huh?
But for some bodies that have grown up really feeling that that is what they shouldn't be doing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Or you think about trans bodies and you think about for them how they felt for so many years, what I am in the wrong body. This
Yeah.
is not right. Things are not connecting. And so it's like it is one of those things. So like vibes when you ask me like how do you do that kind of inner work? How do you get to that place? It's
Mhm.
like yeah, when people feel ready to be able to talk about some of the stories like this, right? To be able to
Yeah.
say, hey, and like I always love sexual debuts stories, like to hear about first times, for many things, first time like you know, there's just so many first time stories that are just so much fun, and when it comes down to it, to give yourself some just generosity and looking at how clumsy sexuality is and how a lot of people just don't know what we're doing, for one,
yeah,
and really being able to learn yourself so that you can learn how to communicate with anybody that you're choosing to be sexual with or sensual
Right.
with so that you can express yourself, right? So that like the work, quote unquote, that you are doing to be able to really think about your sexual story, think about how it's influenced you, think about how maybe your parents' experiences and how they informed you, and teachers and the library and
right.
all of these resources bring you to this place of where you're trying to be a whole integrated sexual person,
Yeah,
you know? And so I think it's worthy work to do, and I think it's
Absolutely.
lovely work because I do believe that having sexual connection with yourself and with other people is a joy and should be something to be greatly celebrated. So I love
Yes.
that you met Growler.
Yeah, he's over here playing footsie right now.
Growler, I mean, I have so many questions for you because I don't know you as well as Vibes, obviously, and so you have a story too, I'm sure. You
You
know.
know what? And if you like, you can always ask me a question. I welcome questions as well.
Okay, so I guess my curiosity is when you think about like your little baby development self,
Yeah.
what was going on? Like, if you look at it now with
If I
adult
look at it
eyes, like,
now, as I look at it now, I grew up in a very religious space, and I remember going to the True Love Waits conferences, where they told us to abstain from sex, um, and um, and then they hierarchied like what was worst. Like oral sex was really bad on the list.
really bad. Okay,
Um,
no mouth and
no
pleasure
mouth, and
parts
then
going
especially,
together.
yeah, especially if it was considered gay, and they were like, definitely
Yes.
not that.
Okay.
You can't
Okay.
be doing that.
Okay.
Um,
Tell me what like where did you grow up? What location in the world?
I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, and
Okay.
so um,
He's Midwestern.
I'm Midwestern in that way.
Okay.
What else? But I also grew up in a very artsy space. I went to performing arts schools, and so I was always around other queer people and was
Okay.
around people who were outwardly queer people who were trying
Okay.
things and exploring things, and so yeah, and By the time I got to college, I was leading Sunday night sex talks where I was I
Oh,
had moved on and was trying to get other people to come talk about sex.
okay.
Yes.
So, from a pretty young age, you were pretty clear about that was kind of bullshit, that you weren't going to swallow that.
You know, it took me a
Not
while.
that anyway. So,
Yeah, yeah, it took me a while, and honestly, um, I find parts of it still popping up every once in a while, and me having to like evaluate what am I doing and why am I doing that in that moment, and or why I feel a specific way in that moment. Um,
Mm,
you know, I think um, like well, not I think, especially around conversations concerning like homophobia, like internalized homophobia, is real, and
yeah, it is real.
every once in a while I have to like check myself, not as often as before, but like definitely, you know, um, it's something that I do have to, I do think about.
Yeah,
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 because we're all
I know.
awash with the system. I
yeah,
mean, whatever we learned, like you were saying, Amy, you learned it at a very young age, however you learn,
right.
and it's never going to be gone. Like, we can't make the things that we learned go
Just
away, right?
disappear.
We
No.
just gotta acknowledge them when they pop up and um, correct the contradiction.
Yeah,
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 because I know definitely that those internalized, some of those internalized messages can be very, very toxic for people, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
so that is why I think it is sometimes so important to be able to really look at some of those, internalized things when they kind of pop up, when they get kind of like, triggered. I know it's such a cliche word to say now, but you have experiences sexually, and you will be surprised about how sometimes there is a remembering that happens, because I really deeply believe that our bodies remember, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
so when you have experiences, maybe you'll have a sexual experience that then brings up, like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that that part of myself was still a little bit hurt and wounded
yeah,
from that message that I got growing up. Or you might have kind of some sort of old narrative that pops up to telling you that you're not good enough, or that it's whatever message that might get internalized. But to be able to have awareness to say, no, that isn't good for my nervous system anymore, to have that thought bouncing around my body.
yeah. Like,
So when it comes to sexual messages, right, and
yeah,
beliefs about self, and beliefs about your core sense of who you are, because some of those sexual messages that you get growing up are so related to your worthiness, about your character, about, just your just really truly your own sense of just normal human makeup of being a sexual person.
yeah,
Sometimes those get shamed quite a bit.
yeah,
And so I think it's really important to like be able to have awareness around what kind of messages that might have been imprinted a little bit more deeply on your soul, or
yeah,
penis or heart or pelvic floor, whatever it might be. And then really be able to say, like, how do I have compassion to those parts of myself that kind of experience pain from either words or actual physical experiences or whatever it might be. So,
yeah, and I feel like, and then once you get to that point of like, okay, now I'm aware and I can speak to that place, that's when it gets so much better. That's when it's like,
it
okay,
gets
I am
so much
standing
better.
in this sexual being. That's what I.
Yes.
Yeah, it just gets so much
Oh my
better.
gosh. To be able to have your own, like, stand in your own light of your own, like, sexual power and your own authority, and you get to decide what you like and what you don't like, and who you like to do it with and who you don't like to do it with, and how you
yeah,
like to do it and how long you like to do it, and what kind of music, and if there's candles, and what kind of words, and like, you get to choose. I say all the time that your heart and your brain are your biggest sex organs, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah,
And so really being able to say, how do I have like a brain that celebrates this beautiful oxytocin that is bursting through my brain, and how does my nervous system receive the wonderful benefits that can come from allowing yourself to have beautiful pleasure in this part of yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's where we want to go next after we take a short little break is like how once you get to that place of awareness and you are allowing your body to fully embrace itself and whatever you want to call it, your spirit, whatever people will name it, but that whole connection where you just like feel this tremendous amount of like deep pleasure that's just radiating from everywhere, and then you add into it on top of your own body chemistry the beauty of cannabis.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mother Cannabis.
Mother
Oh, she's
Cannabis.
so good to us.
She's
Yes.
so good to us. Yes.
Mary Jane.
Mary Jane. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. You know, we are. Do I love that welcome? Let's do.
Good, I like that.
You like that? Welcome back.
Do it again. I interrupted. I was singing along with you.
Yo, no.
No, you should.
Sing along. Sing along. Everybody in the world.
Welcome
Welcome.
back. Here we
Welcome
are.
back. Welcome back. Come on.
Oh,
Growlr.
welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. What's the song I want to sing? What can I say except you're welcome? I know that's from Moana.
Oh, okay. I didn't know where we were going with that, little puffins, but we're back.
We're back, and I'm singing Moana.
I'm Vibes.
And this is Growlr, and we are here with our dear guest and friend Aimee.
Hey.
Hey.
So we
I'm glad
are
to be back too.
we are sparking up and we are getting ourselves situated. I hope our puffins are out there doing the same. Make sure you refresh those drinks. Make sure you have your smoke ready and ready to go.
Be it your bowl, your bong, or your
Your
volcano.
your volcano or your vape pen.
Your vape. Or your edible.
Or your edible. I made some,
Or your sublingual
or your sublingual
tincture.
I made some brownies the other day, and my roommate had one of them, and he told me he definitely had a brownie hangover the next day.
Okay. And he just brought me 6 of them.
So you're supposed to eat half of it.
Oh, only eat half. Okay.
I mean, I ate
You
the whole
needed to
thing.
drink more water.
Yeah, more water.
More water. So while we were on our break, Aimee, you had a question for us, and I'm willing to hear what your question is. What was your question?
The question was, how do you usually like to take cannabis, right? Or are you talking about the question before the break?
Before the break.
Before the
about
break.
How we like
Okay,
to take.
before the break, that
Yeah.
question was your history with cannabis and your sexuality. There's a story that inside of you that I want to hear from both of you.
Do you want to go first?
Sure. Well, I think I have a couple of stories with cannabis, but I think the first story that I was actually I was high. The first time I was actually ever high after indulging in cannabis, and it was a little bit of a sexy story. It was a while ago, a long while ago, and it's the first time I've ever tried a bong actually. So I was with 2 people in my hometown, and we went over to this woman's house, and she was small and petite, and she had this huge ass bong. Like, she may have been maybe like 4'6", and her bong was probably like 5 foot tall. I'm not lying. And I got high, but it was like a moment where I was like with a friend, but I thought she was attractive, but I didn't know. Like at the time, I was still like, oh, you know, like we were talking about sexuality earlier.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I have had attraction to women. I've had a girlfriend at this time. We've been together for a long time, but I'm also seeing this woman, and we're all high, and so we're kind of like all kind of playing around together.
Mm.
And then I pass out because I'm like overly high. And then the two there after that or later snapped all these pictures of me. Like they had a wig on, and they were like taking pictures of me with the bong and stuff. So they violated my consent. I didn't know that at the
Wow.
time, but it was just my first experience with cannabis, and there being like some kind of sexual energy with it. And then
Yeah.
and then later, it wasn't until later, I think, um, when I moved to DC, because even in that time, I had moments where I was like, oh, no, no to drugs. Yeah, I'm going to indulge in drugs.
Yeah.
Because I come from a family that some of my family members have struggled with drug addiction. So I was like
Yeah.
not always pro cannabis, pro let's get high. And even if I was getting high, it wasn't something that I was sharing publicly.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I think,
Because there was a family story around
yeah,
cannabis.
yeah,
For
absolutely.
you. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And so it wasn't
And you had internalized a little bit of what? That, like, there was some fear around cannabis use?
well, not actually fear, but well, maybe. You know, that idea that weed is a gateway drug.
Yeah.
And then
Yes,
two,
definitely.
and then two, that, that whole false notion. And then two, that, like, at the time, like when I was coming of age, some 20 years ago, cannabis was not something that people embraced.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
people. It was like, these people got higher. That people, everybody was getting fucking high, but
Yeah.
yeah. And so I feel like it wasn't until later when I was in my
Yeah, and then you.
yeah.
Yeah.
The war on drugs. You just think about all that.
Yeah,
right,
the war on
right?
drugs, like it's real. I mean, I know
Yeah,
people
the
who
war
are
on
still
drugs
suffering
is
from the
real.
war on drugs.
Yeah, yeah, it is real. Yeah.
But I think it was not until like when I came to DC and then left and then came back and was like, yeah, like okay, there's new understanding of cannabis and how it can be a great thing, and it is a great thing. And the stereotype of who's using, not using, and how they're using doesn't matter. And I think it was a way of like, it's almost like for me now, when we smoke together,
Yeah.
or when we're playing,
Yeah.
if it's just like a casual relaxant that kind of just makes me
Yes.
feel very relaxed, and
Yes.
yeah, it builds it. Yeah, it just makes you feel like okay, you wanna. Who wants to go? Like you were saying earlier, who wants to go into a scene stressed?
Yeah.
Nobody.
Yeah. Yeah, baby.
Yeah.
I know.
So
Think how
that's what
good
it is for me.
that energy is. Think how good that energy is, though, for relationships. Like,
Yeah.
like you think about how you just said that, how you just described that connection that the two of you have. When
Yeah.
you can just kind of relax a little bit, right?
Yeah.
It's so hard. Life is so hard sometimes, and we take ourselves so seriously. And so the cannabis energy comes with this, like, whew, like, let's just get soft inside of ourselves, have that inner critic turn
Yeah.
down a little bit,
Yeah.
get present with yourself. Like, for me, cannabis definitely helps me get present with myself, right?
Yeah.
And my body.
Yeah.
It helps my inner voice turn up a little bit. And I'm like, oh, I can hear it. Like, on a spiritual level, there's a spiritualness to. I know, I'm getting all woo-woo on you guys. Okay,
No.
there is a
Go ahead.
spiritualness to the cannabis for me, for me, right?
Yeah.
There is that, like, that relaxing that you talk about. It's like that is a real experience that when you are a little bit more of an experienced cannabis user, you know how to lean in a little bit, right? So then when you can be an experienced cannabis user and you can say, oh, okay, now how can I lean into this sexual energy that it can bring, and how can I use that to help it be healing and use that in a way that helps the flow? Like, it's so chatty. Like, cannabis helps you chat and talk and, like, be present. And what does sexuality call for? Nothing but being present,
Right.
thinking about your body being touched, and, like, being sensual with a person and skin on skin, and, like, all the endorphins that come with
Yeah.
sexuality, baby, mixed with the THC, and it's like your
Yes.
brain is going boom, boom, boom. It's like got all all the endorphins, it's got all the oxytocin, and it's got the THC. And those like blow up in your head for an explosion of confetti in your mind, and your body's like, fuck yes, that's what's happening.
Right.
You know, such good chemicals going on.
Absolutely.
So I love what you said. Vibes. I was definitely vibing with it. Okay. Any other parts of your story that you feel like are important to offer us?
No, I think that, like I was saying, when you were talking about the explosion, I was also thinking, like, I'm like, oh, an indica. I don't want to really fuck with the indica. But as you were saying that, I was thinking, like, even though, yes, like, the sativa gets me giggly and talky and frisky and want to flirt. And, but when I'm in an indica moment, which is what Growlr really, really enjoys, and I'm sure he'll talk more about it.
Yeah.
But it does create this very relaxed, cuddly, sensual kind of moment. But for me, it happens so quickly that it's like, boom, I'm like in the couch.
In the couch with your indica, yeah. So
But
do you notice any like an indica or do you notice either one of those make you more sensual?
yeah, I think
Have you noticed that?
Yeah, I think that's what I'm saying. That like the indica really does bring the vibe to for me, a very sensual, slow, sedated kind of space. But it's because it's in my brain. It's like so rapid. I'm like I can't. I'm like, okay, I gotta be energized. Like, come on, let's play around. Let's get over there. I'm like, that's me, but
that's why some people suggest, like in like the cannabis world, a lot of people when talking about sexuality, they say, look for a high that you have a deep body high but a clear head high, right? That's kind of what they say. Kind of aim for that. So if you find, edibles help you. A lot of times edibles do give people more of a body high, right? Have you noticed that? Sometimes people say edibles bring a more of a body high, and sometimes the more body high can help in like terms of getting that sensual energy moving, you know. But but everybody's different. I feel like everybody has different reactions. It's so fun to hear,
I know for me, I had a similar story in that I was originally anti-cannabis. And it's funny.
Oh, I never knew this. Okay,
this?
come on, share with it. Come on.
Oh my gosh.
Spill the tea.
Oh, I love it.
So, because I had grown up in a religious environment, my parents were both weed smokers when I was younger, but it was also a time when cannabis wasn't legal, and there were all of these ideas about people who smoked cannabis, like you said.
Right.
And so, I was even surrounded by people, like, all of my friends were, Aimee, I don't know if you know, do you know the band Fish?
Yes, totally.
All of my
very hippie band.
Yes,
right.
All of my friends were Fish heads, and yes,
I was giving me a much better picture of what we're working with.
and I was hanging.
Agreed.
Yes, I was around all of those folks, and during that time, I was with those friends mostly through my undergrad, and I didn't smoke at all. It was just not my thing. And then by the time I had graduated and started working, and by the time I started getting off work, my friends at that time were people who smoked in the afternoons, and so I started, I buy a J here and there, and just smoke in the afternoon. And for me, it became also the same time that I was like masturbating also. So, cannabis totally came into my world during like me setting my patterns in 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 being like a corporate, not corporate American, but just like like it became a part
an adult.
An adult. But it really for me was still like a lot of shame associated with it. So I maybe smoke a J through the week, and I just use a little bit of it to get me in the mood and to feel sexy and to feel, to touch my body and feel um, like I can feel all the hairs on my legs and all of that. But it really started off for me as something that I was like totally rejecting.
Hmm.
Mm.
This says a lot now.
Interesting.
It says a lot. Like
Interesting.
I'm listening to you speak, and I'm like, okay, this is new information.
Did you know that I also didn't drink for the first time until I went to college? Like all of my friends were drinking in high school, and I had my first drink at this party, and I had red wine. I had a single glass. I was deathly hungover. Um,
And look how many bottles. I mean, not bottles, glasses you can drink now. But but no, it's interesting because to hear you say that, and we don't really share a lot about our intimacy and sexual relationship here on the show,
no.
but it is very telling because most people would be like, "Oh, Growler is the high energy of the bunch," and so that means like that might transfer into like the space of our, you know, our sex life,
Yeah.
but he's really he's like his weed. He likes the slow, like he's just talking about this slow, intimate. It was your way of like calming down.
Yeah.
And for me, weed was like it's a party. It was always a party, thing. So it's like I'm with my friends. We getting high. Like we rolling up. We about to go out and party. We gonna be out all night.
No.
We're gonna turn up.
It was a social. It was a social.
Yeah, very much social because we were like, no, we not fucking with Connie,
Yeah.
but we can drink and we can get high, and so that's how it kind of like that's why I'm like always okay. If we're gonna get some weed together, we're gonna purchase some cannabis. I want there to be at least a hybrid, or I want it to be
A sativa. Yes.
because I don't want to be like down. But I'm learning how now.
Yeah, for me,
Through you,
for me, it was really around a lot of anxiety that I had concerning my body, concerning my my penis,
And no one
concerning
wants a threesome with anxiety.
yeah, and
Yeah,
like
right.
and so for me,
No one.
wants a penis with anxiety.
for me, it was really about getting to a place where I wasn't thinking about those things, and um, because I don't think many people around me would know that I am a very anxious person, and I spend a lot of time like over evaluating the world around me, and so for me, cannabis, and like I said, even to the point where I was privately smoking, like it wasn't a conversation, it wasn't like I actually remember times where I like accidentally saw someone that I worked with, and I was apologetic. Like,
What do you mean?
like I couldn't believe that they had seen me this way. And
Oh, you
seen
were
me
high.
high, and I felt so guilty, and now it's it's quite different.
Yeah. But look at the evolution.
Yeah.
The evolution of yourself there, right? And and also giving yourself looking back on that evolution of your experience around sexuality and cannabis and breaking some of the shame and the stigma that you had about sexuality and that you had about cannabis, right?
Yeah.
And it's like getting on that path, and it's like, okay, now here you are arrived, and you're like, it's really different now, and it's like, does it feel better in your body? Do you feel more aligned with yourself sexually now?
Yeah,
absolutely.
I do, and I know for me, um, for me, it really has allowed me to create, because when you're high, your inner monologue is a lot different. You're
Yes,
like,
that critic. That's why I'm saying the inner critic is different. Okay, and yes, it sometimes can go to paranoia, but continue because yes, this is
yeah,
exactly what I like to say.
yeah. It's like it for me. I'm only calling myself sexy when I'm high. Like I am like you cute and
Really?
you are soft and you and look at that thickness and look at that, you know. But when I'm not, I can stand in front of the mirror for a long time, and I can list, and
Mm.
the list is not always
Wow.
nice.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, that's really yeah, Growler.
So then this is my theory, is that Mother Cannabis,
Mm.
as that enters your body, turns that inner critic down, turns that sexual critic down,
Yeah,
turns that sexual shame story down,
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and then some of those inhibitions, some of those breaks that have been part of your sexual story, sexual self, thinking I'm not good at this, or I'm not enough this way, or my body isn't enough this way, or whatever it might be, right?
yeah,
All those turn down, and then you're like, I am sexy,
yeah,
you know?
Right.
Or you're like, how wonderful is it to have this beautiful penis head in my mouth? And I'm thinking about the taste buds on my tongue against
yes,
the head of the penis, or whatever it is. Like, you get so in the moment because Mother Cannabis heightens your senses. You know,
Yeah.
your senses are heightened in a way that if you can lean in and you can turn off some of that critic, it helps you lean into whatever it is. So if you're doing yoga, or if you're having beautiful sex with someone that you've consented with, or many people, or one person, or yourself,
right,
or you're doing anything that you need to bring a presence to,
Right.
right? I feel like that cannabis, that help of that, whatever it lights up in our endocannabinoid system, right? Whatever that is that gets lit up, or our senses get lit up, or our heart or our brain gets lit up, or whatever it is that happens energetically when it goes into our system, you can be suggestible to lean in to that sensual self.
yeah,
And sometimes what you arrive at is this really beautiful, raw version of your sexuality that is just the most lovely. And I love when people can arrive there, you know? And I think, like, with the help of cannabis, I've really, for me personally, have learned how to, like, turn down some of those scripts and narratives
Mm.
that I had coming into my sexual self,
yeah,
right? And it's really helped me turn down some of those inhibitions and, like, turned up these, like, things where I'm like, pleasure, yes, pleasure,
Right.
you know, like being much more pleasure focused instead of goal focused around my sexual experiences, right? It
yeah.
has allowed me to help me be present and in the moment, and that is such a cool thing for my sexuality.
Because
So I celebrate that.
because
know?
that's what I was gonna say. Like, and knowing, like, talking about the various strains and knowing those strains and how you respond to them, being able to dictate your own experience
Yeah.
and providing yourself with a measure of pleasure because you know that this strain of cannabis is going to help you be in this way. It's going to bring forth these things.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that about that because
100%. And I always say this too, because I don't know what you're saying. I always say sex is a place you go, not a thing you do. It's a place you go. You create a container for your sexuality, right?
Yeah.
The two of you, you have a container. Me, I have a container for myself, and then I have a container with my partner, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And then and then when you can, when how you're saying, like, you can know a certain strain and how it hits you, and you can say, ooh, yeah, let's, like, bring that into the container, you know?
Granddaddy Purple.
And it just can. What's your favorite? Tell me, I love it.
Granddaddy Purple.
The purple yoker.
Granddaddy
Yokel.
Perp, baby.
Yes.
We love Granddad.
Granddaddy Purple does wonders for my life.
I love it. And, like, you think about it too on, like, you know, with anatomy, and you think about blood flow, right? It really increases blood flow to our pleasure parts. You
Yeah.
know? And so cannabis helps in so many ways to kind of, it's a sexy drug when you can lean into it.
And we hope that everyone is leaning into it or taking the opportunity to learn more how they can lean into it.
Yes.
Do you have any resources that you could share?
Around sexuality, okay.
Or no, are there resources around sexuality in cannabis or sexuality in
They're starting to be, and I took this course, and it was the most wonderful weekend. It was called Sex, Cannabis, and Psychedelics. And
Oh
it
my
was
God,
just the
I
most
want to be there.
fun weekend course.
Can I sign up?
Okay.
Puff Love Book Club.
Well, it was funny because one of the presenters, it was these two black therapists that live close to you two, like
Mm.
in the DC area. I will share with you their Instagrams.
Yeah, please.
And it changed me. It changed their conversation that they had for this group, where they were talking about the experiences of black and brown bodies and disabled bodies that we have like on their shoulders is how we've gotten legislation to happen, right? And how scary a time it was to admit that you were a cannabis user for so many people, and women too, and CPS and all of the systems that get so
Right.
complicated in it all, right? And so I will point you to them, and also, gosh, let me think. You guys caught me off guard. I need to remember the resources. Okay.
No.
Okay. The problem. Okay, there is people. There's a woman named on Instagram is called Canisexual, and she's talking about it. So they're starting to emerge. I think more conversations around plant medicine. Anyway, I think plant medicine and the healing components of all of the psychedelics that could be healing that way. I think there's more conversations. Obviously, things are becoming more legal, like in Oregon and things like that.
Right.
So I think that there's going to be more things on the horizon, but it's still a very new space. So I think that we, the three of us, are in very much a fun space of conversation. I think it's an interesting conversation. I think there is more resources that are needed, to be honest.
Yeah,
so
and
I love that we're talking about it.
Me too, and I think that we could probably come back and have another conversation another time about just the idea of psychedelics, sexuality, and psychedelics.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I would love to have that conversation.
I'm going to go into a sexual experience with cannabis and my partner, and it is a safe place because your nervous system, right, is knowing it's a safe place.
Right.
Your nervous system is telling you, hey, you're going to have cannabis, everything's safe. The paranoia can be turned down. That script that you have about whatever your penis is supposed to be doing or not doing can be turned down, and you can just be present with the experience, whatever the container is that you created, right? And so I do think that cannabis kind of helps enforce that container, helps create it. If you were intentional, and that's why it's true. You shouldn't like be social with people that you like that are safe. Do weed with people that are safe.
Right.
You know. Yeah.
Make sure you always do anything with people you're safe with.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Amen. I love that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Unless you're consenting to having some fear.
Yes.
That should be.
Everything with consent.
Everything with consent. Exactly.
Absolutely.
Today, everyone, Little Puffins, the word of the day is consent. So that brings us to...
Yes. Aimee, we've enjoyed spending time with you. Before we wrap up our show, we would like to invite you into our Eat, Puff, Love moment. What we're going to do is we're going to spin our wheel, and our wheel will tell us whether or not you will respond to an Eat, Puff, or a Love. Are you ready, Aimee?
I am. Spin the wheel.
Let's spin the wheel.
The wheel is spinning now.
Are you ready? Boop. And it is a most recent eat. Something that you've ate most recently that you really, really, really loved.
Well, let me tell you, it's a food that I've wanted to eat because I saw it, and it's basically called a butter charcuterie.
A butter
Oh,
charcuterie.
I've seen
Someone
these.
uses butter.
It's all butter?
Yes.
I've seen these.
It's like soft butter, and then you put like salt on it, and then you put honey on it,
Yeah.
and then someone puts dried edible flowers over it, and then you get to scoop your little piece of bread and like eat this like beautiful piece of buttered bread or
Yes.
whatever. And so, like, oh my gosh, like, I want to eat that,
I,
you know?
Is
I've
it on a
seen that.
wooden board?
Yes.
It's just called the butter charcuterie board.
Butter
I don't know what it's
charcuterie
called.
board.
Yes, I've seen that online, but you know, I always wonder, like, do you need to keep the air conditioning on so that the butter doesn't all melt away? Because it's a really nice presentation when you see, like you said,
It
the
is.
flowers and the honey and all these
Right.
things on this waved butter that is of
Mhm.
sorts. But
Well, if you have cheese on the side, you could have grilled cheese.
you could have a grilled cheese.
If it were melty.
Mm.
But I do like cold butter on, or like room temperature butter on a great piece of bread. And then, like, you could put all the, like you said, like a little salt or a little something.
Vibes. I do have an eats question for you
Ooh.
because I just remembered something.
Yes.
So, do you remember that place we used to go to that had like a tuna fish sandwich? They put sprouts on it.
I remember.
Like, I would always make you come with me, and I would always be like, I have to get this tuna sandwich with the sprouts, but I've never forgotten it. And now that we're talking about things to eat, I think we ate at a lot of wonderful places, you know?
We did.
And I'm sorry that you don't remember the tuna sandwich that I swear you introduced me to.
I'm trying to think. I mean, there's so many little delis around DC where you can get like that. It's like going to the Vermont Country Deli where you get the thick bread with the tuna and the sprouts. And
yeah.
It's, yeah.
You would take me to always so many good places.
Well, yeah, Vibes loves to go to a good place and eat. I'm
Yes.
telling you, I didn't get to speak to my sexual development since meeting Vibes, and so I won't. What I'll do?
What?
I won't because
I would love to.
You would? You know what?
A never before moment. Come on. Tell the people.
Moment. Oh my gosh, is this behind the scenes? Well, I'm going to tie it back to food, so everybody be prepared for the conversation to make a Yui.
So this is your eat moment.
This
okay.
This this is my eat moment. Long story long.
Okay.
I was gonna say that the since meeting Vibes, one of the things that I've learned about my sexual self is actually what you've been talking about, Aimee, and like setting the intention for who you are and what you want to what your sexual self to be. You know, I think about myself, and I think outwardly people assume that I have no worries about, you know, my sexuality and I'm very comfortable. But what I've learned from being with Vibes is I've actually learned how to love myself more and like feel sexy, and you with someone who sees how beautiful you are and appreciates who you are and encourages you to be the best part of yourself. And they always say that Sagittarius people are always looking for the next adventure, and I will say that sexually, I feel like I've had an adventure, and I feel like I've learned a lot about myself. And this is going back to the eat moment because I was gonna say, because you were saying how Vibes took you to a lot of really cool restaurants, and I was gonna say Vibes is taking me to a lot of cool everything, and and I just feel grateful for that. Yes, that's my eat moment.
I love this.
Yeah, so like I've eaten a lot of things that I would have. I mean, like real talk.
What you talking about?
I'm telling you, child, I have eaten all across the planet. things that if sat on the dinner table I grew up at would be thrown away.
I love it. I love it.
So yeah, like even the idea that we're talking about a charcuterie butter plate.
Butterboard.
You know, my blood pressure is over here asking questions, but
Oh, well, I told you what you need to do about that.
Well, I have one more food story. I'm sorry. Do you guys need to go? We've been
No, go
talking way
ahead.
longer
Give
than
us
we
one more
promised the
story.
folks, but I do have another vibes food story.
Go
And
ahead.
related to sexuality too. Okay. So we
Ooh.
were in New York City
Yeah.
and vibes, I don't think you had told me that you also liked boys, or that
Yeah, I don't think
we
I
hadn't had a
said. Yeah.
conversation that you were gay. And so, but I kind of sensed it, I think, and you know what I mean? But then it's like, how do you bring it up? All the things, right? We
Yeah.
even had that long. Anyway, we were in a Korean restaurant eating Korean food, like kimchi. I
Right.
think and it was like 2 a.m. in New York City, and there we were having this late night conversation. And then I was like, "Vibes, do you like boys?" Or it was in the bed. I don't exactly remember, but I remember that Korean restaurant.
Right.
We had such a fun conversation where finally you were telling me that you were gay, and I was asking you all the questions, and you were telling me your story, and it was all over Korean food, and I'll never forget it. And so
I know,
we have
isn't
so
that
many fun memories with food with vibes. I love it.
The
So
kimchi jjigae
I
every
know,
time.
and this was before I even ended up living in Korea, and yeah, definitely because at the time, that's how I saw
This is
myself.
pre-Korea.
This is pre-Korea, yeah.
Wow.
Foreshadowing, that's what they call it, right?
Foreshadowing.
But yeah, you're
wait,
right, Amy.
what's the foreshadowing? I don't know this part of the story. What do you mean?
Because after you and I being in New York and me having like that, like sharing with you about how I saw myself at that time, my sexuality at the time, right, identifying as gay,
Yeah.
at that time, and how later I go off and live in Korea
Yeah.
and teaching in Korea and exploring my sexuality there, you know, and experiencing now I'm having this idea of I'm a bisexual man, and having that whole experience, and then coming back and trying to like fit myself back into this gay mold
Yeah.
that wasn't really who I was, but that's how I decided to be in that moment for whatever reason.
Right.
And now having this whole like 180-degree spin and be like, nah, this is what I was before. I like who I like.
I like who I like, and I like.
And I enjoy eating.
And I enjoy eating some food.
But that
Food
exactly
and other
vibes.
things.
Coming to that space, coming
Yeah.
to that knowing of saying, I like what I like and it's okay, and that it's just who I am, and I'm just going to find pleasure and joy and be confident in that. That is the getting to the knowing of self.
Yeah.
Around it, right? Oh, it's a beautiful place to be.
It really is.
I love to hear all of those words. Those were beautiful words for my ears.
Yes, it's a beautiful place to be, and it's been a beautiful conversation
It
with
has
you,
been.
Amy. Yes, yes,
Love you too.
yes.
Whoop,
Two
whoop,
hits,
whoop.
a you too. I'll take it.
Yes.
So, Amy, if you have, I know that you're on sabbatical right now in your practice. But if our listeners, our little puffins, wanted to get more information from you or follow you on any social media site, is there anything you'd like to offer up?
I mean, I have my personal Instagram is Aimee Heff, AIMEEHEFF. You can say hi if you want to talk about anything. Come slide into my DMs. Don't send me any pictures, but just say hi.
Right. No.
I guess that's probably my main place, I guess.
Yeah.
But right now I am not seeing any clients for a while.
Okay, you hear
so.
that? Even though you know that you'd probably want her to be your therapist, right now she's not taking new clients. So, folks, just if you're gonna slide in the DM, no body part pictures. Just a hi.
I can totally point to good therapists, sex therapists, through the ASECT website, which is the American Association of Sex Educators, Therapists, and Counselors. And if you just type that in, it will come up. You can search by your city and find sex therapists that are trained and that can be culturally competent in helping do any work around sexuality. There's so many good ones out there. There's tons of great ones that you can also find that are doing great work on TikTok and Instagram. There's great conversations around sexuality right now out in the world.
Yeah, and that's what we need.
Yeah, we do need more of that.
I agree.
Because if everybody's having sex and it's consensual, I think this world would probably be amazing.
World Consensual
Everyone just
Orgy
needs to
Day.
get a little high.
Get a little high.
Sex. Maybe we could all just relax a little bit, you know?
Thank you, Aimee, for being
Yes.
on our show.
We
We
love
have
you.
appreciated
Thank
you. We
Maybe
love
someday
you.
Part 2.
And
Part 2 coming soon.
Part 2 coming soon. But until part 2 gets here, all of our puppins, don't forget.
Puppins.
Puppins.
All of our little puffins.
Our little puffins. Our little puffins, enjoy our show. Check out all of our other episodes and wherever you get your podcasts, etc., etc. Subscribe,
and follow.
like,
and
follow,
always remember
and
to
always remember to eat,
puff, love. All right, little puffins. Till next time.
Join us by subscribing to wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, and remember to eat, puff, love.